My Lord Coleridge, lords, ladies, and gentlemen, I confess that my mind was a little relieved when I found out that the toast to which I am required to respond rolled three gentlemen, Cerberus-like, into one. And when I saw science pulling impatiently at the leash on my left, and art on my right, and that therefore the responsibility of only a third part of the acknowledgment has fallen on me. You, my lord, have alluded to the difficulties of after-dinner oratory. I must say that I am one of those who feel them more keenly the more after-dinner speeches I make. There are a great many difficulties in the way, and there are three principal ones, I think. The first is the having too much to say, so that the words, hurrying to escape, bear down and trample out the life of each other. The second is when, having nothing to say, we are expected to fill a void in the minds of our hearers. And I think the third, the most formidable, is the necessity of following a speaker who is sure to say all the things you meant to say, and better than you, so that we are tempted to exclaim with the old grammarian, "Hang these fellows who have said all our good things before us!" Now, the 4th of July has several times been alluded to, and I believe it is generally thought that on that anniversary the spirit of a certain bird known to heraldic ornithologists, and I believe to them alone, as the spread eagle, enters into every American's breast and compels him, whether he will or no, to pour forth a flood of national self-laudation. This, I say, is the general superstition, and I hope that a few words of mine may serve in some sort to correct it. I ask you, if there is any other people who have confined their national self-laudation to one day of the year. I may be allowed to make one remark as to a personal experience. Fortune has willed it that I should see as many, perhaps more, cities and manners of men as Ulysses, and I have observed one general fact, and that is, that the adjectival epithet which is prefixed to all the virtues is invariably the epithet which geographically describes the country that I am in. For instance, not to take any real name, if I am in the kingdom of Lilliput, I hear of the Lilliputian virtues. I hear courage, I hear common sense, and I hear political wisdom called by that name. If I cross to the neighboring republic Blefusca, for since Swift's time it has become a republic, I hear all these virtues suddenly qualified as Blefuscan. I am very glad to be able to thank Lord Coleridge for having, I believe for the first time, coupled the name of the President of the United States with that of Her Majesty on an occasion like this. I was struck both in what he said and what our distinguished guest of this evening said with the frequent recurrence of an adjective which is comparatively new. I mean the word English-speaking. We continually hear nowadays of the English-speaking race, of the English-speaking population. I think this implies, not that we are to forget, not that it would be well for us to forget, that national emulation and that national pride which are implied in the words Englishman and American. But the word implies that there are certain perennial and abiding sympathies between all men of a common descent and a common language. I am sure, my lord, that all you said with regard to the welcome which one distinguished guest will receive in America is true. His eminent talents as an actor, the dignified, I may say that illustrious manner in which he has sustained the traditions of that succession of great actors who, from the time of Burbage to his own, have illustrated the English stage, will be as highly appreciated there as here. And I am sure that I may also say that the Chief Magistrate of England will be welcomed by the Bar of the United States, of which I am an unworthy member, and perhaps will be all the more warmly regarded that he does not come among them to practice. He will find American law administered, and I think you will agree with me in saying ably administered, by judges who, I am sorry to say, sit without the traditional wig of England. I have heard since I came here friends of mine gravely lament this as something prophetic of the decay which was sure to follow so serious an innovation. I answered with a little story which I remember hearing from my father. He remembered the last clergyman in New England who still continued to wear the wig. At first it became a singularity, and at last a monstrosity, and the good doctor concluded to leave it off. But there was one poor woman among his parishioners who lamented this sadly, and waylaying the clergyman as he came out of church, she said, "Oh, dear doctor, I have always listened to your sermon with the greatest edification and comfort, but now that the wig is gone, all is gone." I have thought I've seen some signs of encouragement in the faces of my English friends after I have consoled them with this little story. But I must not allow myself to indulge in any further remarks. There is one virtue, I am sure, in after-dinner oratory, and that is brevity. And as to that, I am reminded of a story. The Lord Chief Justice has told you what are the ingredients of after-dinner oratory. They are the joke, the quotation, and the platitude, and the successful platitude, in my judgment, requires a very high order of genius. I believe that I have not given you a quotation, but I am reminded of something which I heard when very young. The story of a Methodist clergyman in America. He was preaching at a camp meeting, and he was preaching upon the miracle of Joshua, and he began his sermon with this sentence: "My hearers, there are 3 motions of the sun. The first is the straightforward or direct motion of the sun. The second is the retrograde or backward motion of the sun. And the third is the motion mentioned in our text. The sun stood still." Now, gentlemen, I don't know whether you see the application of the story. I hope you do. The after-dinner orator at first begins and goes straight forward, that is, the straightforward motion of the sun. Next he goes back and begins to repeat himself, that is, the backward motion of the sun. At last he has the good sense to bring himself to the end, and that is the motion mentioned in our text, "As the sun stood still."